Hey, before we begin tonight's story, can I ask you something gentle? What time is it where you are right now? What does the night feel like? Is your room dark or lit with the soft glow of a lamp? Are you lying still or listening with your eyes half closed? Right now, somewhere in the world, someone else is also listening, searching not for answers, but for rest. This story isn't a lecture. It's not about memorizing. It's about feeling science as something soft and human, as something that moves like breath, like memory, like dream. Tonight we'll drift into a world where particles slip through walls, where time stutters, and where the impossible happens quietly, again and again. So, let your shoulders sink a little deeper. Let your thoughts float just above sleep, and together, let's begin our journey through quantum tunnels, how particles walk through walls. Tonight, as your body softens and the world outside dims, you find yourself standing before a wall. Not a brick wall, not stone, but something stranger, invisible, silent. A barrier not made of matter, but of probability. It doesn't cast a shadow. You could walk right into it and still not feel it. And yet for something so intangible, it holds firm, at least for most things. You are not alone at this wall. A particle stands beside you. It has no feet, no eyes, no voice, only the quiet certainty of its being. It knows the wall is there. It knows it cannot climb, and yet it does not turn back. Instead, it pauses, waits, and then it vanishes. Not shattered, not burned, not pushed through with force. It simply isn't here anymore, and it is there, just beyond the wall, as if it had skipped the solid part of the world altogether. No crack in the stone, no tunnel dug. The wall remains unchanged. This, you realize, is the gentle knock that was never heard. Quantum tunneling, a phenomenon that defies the logic your waking mind loves to cling to. You sit with the thought. In your world, walls mean no. They mean not now, not this way. But in the quantum world, no doesn't always mean never. Sometimes the improbable happens, not because it should, but because it can. Imagine tossing a ball at a hill. It rolls up, slows, then rolls back down. Now imagine tossing a quantum ball. Instead of returning, it appears on the other side, without ever reaching the top. This is the kind of mischief the smallest parts of your universe are up to. Not often, not loudly, but with quiet certainty. And here's the wonder. The particle doesn't even need a reason. It isn't breaking rules, it's following different ones. Rules written in probabilities, not certainties, where the question is never will it happen, but what is the chance that it might? And that chance, however slim, is enough. Enough for particles to pass through the sun's core, fueling the warmth you feel on your face each morning. Enough for your body to make energy, to carry messages, to think. Enough for life to be life. You walk a little closer to this wall. In your mind, it begins to look familiar. It's not just a quantum puzzle. It's every fear you've had that felt impenetrable. Every no you assumed was forever. Every moment you thought was the end. And yet somehow it wasn't. Tunneling doesn't bulldoze obstacles. It slips past them softly. It trusts the unseen. It trusts the unlikely. And sometimes trusting the unlikely is exactly what moves you forward. In the world of the very small, there is no such thing as absolute stillness. Everything dances, flickers, hums, even when you sleep. Even now, your atoms are in motion, and in that motion lives the possibility of a leap. A leap not through space, but through the fabric of what can be. Tonight you are that particle, still patient, unafraid of the wall. You feel its presence, but you do not turn back, because somewhere deep in the laws of nature, there is a door no one sees, and it may open, not with force, but with possibility. And as your breath slows and your limbs grow heavy, you begin to understand something softly miraculous. It doesn't matter how solid the wall seems. What matters is that the rules of the world, at their deepest level, allow for wonder, allow for mystery, allow for the particle to pass. And maybe, just maybe, so can you. Because on the other side of this invisible wall, something waits, not a destination, but a question. A quiet question wrapped in fog. If the world is built from uncertainty, what does that make your reality? Let's drift toward that next. You open your hand beneath the covers. It feels firm, familiar, a boundary of skin, muscle, and warmth. But if you could shrink yourself down, far, far smaller than your smallest cell, you would see something entirely different. Not a solid palm, not a wall of matter, but a buzzing cloud, atoms, endlessly restless, trembling with energy, yet mostly empty. Their cores are tiny, and their outer edges, where electrons spin, are not even places you can point to. Because an electron isn't just in one spot. It's many maybes, a haze of where it could be, all at once until someone looks too closely. And then just like that, it picks a place, but not because it was hiding there all along, only because being seen made it choose. You let that idea wash over you, soft, unsettling, yet beautiful, that what we call solid is really made of possibility, that what we call being is more like a shimmer. In this universe, fuzziness isn't a flaw, it's fundamental. Uncertainty is not confusion, it's the gentle heartbeat of existence. Heisenberg first whispered this truth, that you can't know both where something is and how fast it's going. Not precisely, not at the same time. And the more closely you try to trap a particle in your gaze, the more it slips through, like fog between fingers, like a dream you almost remembered. Tonight you are floating inside that fog, inside your own atoms, inside your breath. You are not here in just one place. Your presence is a field, a blend of all the moments and positions you might be in. And that doesn't make you less real. It makes you more, because if everything were fixed, if every particle had a single destiny, there would be no room for change, no space for choice, no space for you. So instead the world trembles gently beneath its own laws, and you get to tremble with it. Outside, maybe the night feels still, but inside you, within every fiber, there is motion. There is blurring, stretching, uncertainty. There is a quiet celebration of everything that might happen, but hasn't yet. A particle doesn't need to be told where to go. It explores every path, all at once, and only when something interacts, when something touches or observes, does it decide. Maybe that's how your thoughts feel sometimes. Scattered, uncertain, unsettled. But what if that's not a flaw either? What if your uncertainty is a kind of beauty? What if your thoughts, like electrons, are dancing between possibilities, and only settle when the time is right? You rest deeper now, not afraid of the blur. You are the blur, and somehow that's comforting. You're not fixed. You're not final. You are soft-edged, like moonlight on water. And in this fuzzy world, everything touches everything. Every possibility leaks into the next. And somewhere inside all that uncertainty, there is a doorway, a passageway that doesn't exist until you believe it might. That's what tunneling is built on. That's what life is built on. You turn your gaze gently to that idea, that a particle in its uncertainty can slip through a wall, because it never said no. It only said maybe, and maybe is enough. You are floating now between positions, between thoughts, no longer clinging to answers, only resting inside the hum of questions. And as this chapter closes, you feel yourself drawn toward a deeper mystery still. Because if the rules are so different at this tiny scale, what rulebook are we following, and who wrote it? Let's step into that unknown together. In the next slow breath of thought, you've spent your whole life trusting rules. Drop something and it falls. Close your eyes and the world stays where it is. Step forward and the floor catches you. But beneath these comforting laws, there is another set of rules, stranger, quieter, unspoken. Rules that do not shout, but hum gently beneath the fabric of reality. And tonight you begin to hear them. You are lying in your bed, still and warm. But your mind floats elsewhere, into a classroom with no walls, where nothing is written in chalk, but everything is written in possibility. Here the first rule of this hidden world is simple. Nothing is certain, only likely. Probability becomes the ink of the universe. Particles don't follow a single path. They explore all of them, 1,000 roads, all traveled at once. You picture this, a particle released from rest, faced with a barrier too high to climb. In classical physics, the answer is final. It cannot pass. But in the quantum world, the rules pause. They bend. They whisper, try anyway. Because here the impossible is merely unlikely, and unlikely things happen all the time. In the early 20th century, scientists began to hear these whispers. Schrödinger imagined particles as waves, not crashing surf, but soft probability waves, rippling out through space like breath in cold air. These waves don't stop at walls. They fade, but they don't vanish. Part of the wave always reaches the other side. And where there is a wave, there is a chance. You trace that logic like tracing your finger along soft paper. If a wave can leak through a wall, then a particle can too. Not by force, not by magic, but by following the quiet math of its own being. This was the beginning of quantum tunneling. It shocked the physicists. It didn't feel right. How could something go through without going in? But nature didn't flinch. Nature kept showing the same result. And now, a century later, we've stopped calling it strange. We call it useful. Your body uses it. The sun depends on it. Every microchip hums with its rhythm. And yet it still feels like a secret. You imagine a new rulebook, soft and bound in silence, opened only in the minds of those willing to unlearn what they thought they knew. The pages say here particles do not ask permission. Here paths are not singular. Here a wall is only an idea with thinning edges. Here the world unfolds through chance, and chance alone. You're not afraid of this rulebook. You're curious, because suddenly reality feels less like a prison, and more like a question with 1,000 answers. Even now, as you lie still, the atoms within you obey this deeper script. They tunnel, they blur, they behave as if walls are optional. And what is a wall, really? A space between what is and what isn't. But tunneling says perhaps they are not so separate after all. You drift through history, past the stunned silence of scientists watching particles vanish and reappear, past the graphite scribbles of equations that changed everything, past the moment humanity realized that the world was not built for clarity, but for wonder. Wonder that a particle could feel its way through nothing. Wonder that the smallest things move with such quiet boldness. And as your breath deepens, you wonder too. What else might be possible? Not because it's allowed, but because the laws themselves are softer than we think. Because the rulebook, this one, the hidden one, doesn't shout, it doesn't insist. It just gently permits. And sometimes permission is all you need. In the next chapter, we'll look closer, not at particles, but at you. Because this isn't just about what matter can do. It's about what you're made of, and how, deep within your cells, you carry the same strange magic. You carry the tunnel inside. You are not just watching the quantum world. You are made from it. Beneath your skin, beneath the warmth of your chest, beneath even the cells that stitch you together, There is a motion so subtle, so small, that it took physicists a century to see it clearly. And yet, it is always there, always part of you. Your breath rises, not just because lungs inflate, but because energy flows, because electrons leap. But they don't leap like you might imagine. They don't climb. They don't push. They tunnel. Yes, that same strange miracle happens inside you, again and again, every single second. In the quiet chambers of your mitochondria, the little engines inside every living cell, electrons move through molecules like travelers on invisible roads. But some of those roads are blocked. Some paths have no bridge. And yet the electrons cross. They don't wait for new paths to form. They don't reroute. They tunnel. That means your body, this very body, soft, breathing, half asleep under the covers, runs on improbability. You are alive because particles keep doing the impossible. It happens in your heartbeat. It happens in your brain. When a thought sparks across neurons, when memory stirs, when muscles twitch in your sleep, somewhere deep in that motion, a tiny leap is taking place. A jump that shouldn't be possible, but is, because you, like everything else in the universe, obey the deeper rules, and the deeper rules are gentle. They don't demand perfection. They don't insist on certainty. They allow softness. They allow the unlikely. They allow you. You are not standing outside of physics. You are the proof that physics lives in the body. You are a tunnel, not a tunnel with walls, but with thresholds, possibilities, moments, tiny chances carried by flickering particles that have learned to trust the dark. It's strange, isn't it, that something as abstract as quantum mechanics is the quiet pulse in your veins, the hum behind your warmth, the rhythm of your life. You turn onto your side now, and you feel it differently. The comfort of knowing that life doesn't need certainty to continue. It only needs possibility, and possibility is enough. So when you feel stuck, when it seems like there's no way forward, remember your cells. Remember that they move through barriers every moment of your existence, not by force, not with violence, but with patience, with quiet, with trust in the unseen. You've been doing the impossible since the moment you became a cluster of dividing cells. You've been tunneling since before you had a name. So maybe tonight, as the dark surrounds you, you don't need a clear answer. You don't need a perfect plan. You only need the chance, the faint glow of probability that says maybe, and maybe is enough. You close your eyes again, and inside you, quietly, invisibly, particles are still moving, still leaping, still tunneling, not for science, not for theory, but for you. And now that you've felt this miracle within, we'll rise just a little higher, towards something even more extraordinary, because the tunnel isn't just inside your cells, it burns in the heart of the sun itself. Now drift higher, far above your body, above your roof, above the sleeping city, the quiet fields, the clouds, and into the deep golden silence of space. There, a light burns without rest. It has burned for billions of years. It warms your days, grows your food, brushes your skin with gold. You call it the sun, but tonight you don't look at it. You enter it, slowly, safely, as only a dream can. You drift toward that searing sphere, and inside you do not find rage. You find a quiet miracle, a fusion, a union, a tunnel, deep in the heart of flame. The sun is made of hydrogen, simple light atoms. Each one holds a proton at its center, and those protons don't want to be close. They repel each other. They are both positively charged, like two magnets forced together. The closer they get, the harder they push back. In classical physics, they should never touch. The pressure would never be enough. But the sun doesn't obey classical physics. It obeys the quieter rules. It obeys tunneling, because sometimes, very rarely, two protons forget to resist. They leap softly across the boundary and fuse. And that fusion, it releases energy, pure radiant energy, the kind that feeds plants, stirs oceans, warms your back on a cold morning. That energy begins in silence, in a tunnel, in a place where one proton becomes bold enough to maybe be somewhere it shouldn't. And that maybe lights the sky. You float inside the core, and you feel it, the impossible made normal, the unlikely made inevitable. It doesn't happen often. Most protons try and fail. But the sun doesn't need all of them to succeed. It only needs enough. Enough tiny triumphs to fill the universe with warmth. Enough quiet leaps to make life possible. Not just for you, but for every tree, every wing, every ripple of water on this planet. All because of tunneling. You drift deeper into the heat, but you don't burn. You only feel awe. Awe that fusion, this violent sounding word, is made not of explosions, but of patience, of persistence, of possibility, just like you, because you too are built of protons, of atoms forged in other stars, born in tunnels, not unlike these, carried across time by light and gravity and chance. And somehow, you became this, a body curled in quiet, a breath listening to stars. You think again of walls, the walls you see in your world, fear, failure, timing, uncertainty, and you wonder if the sun can shine, because of tunneling. What else might bloom, if you learn to slip past what feels impossible? What else might glow? Not because you forced it, but because you waited, for the right chance, the right gap in the wall, the right moment to leap. Even the sun, vast, ancient, unshaken, depends on chance. It trusts the math of the improbable, and that trust makes daybreak possible. You are made from that same light. You are built on the shoulders of that faith. The stars are not separate from you. They are your history. They are your heat. And now, as you begin to drift downward again, back toward your bed, your breath, your waiting dreams, you carry something new. A warmth that doesn't come from blankets or air, but from knowing the sun shines because something dared to try, even when the odds were thin. And that is enough. As you float back through cloud and sky, a thought lingers. If the sun's fire begins with a tunnel, what happens to time itself, once inside it? Close your eyes again, and follow a single particle. It waits just before a wall, not hesitating, not afraid, but caught in a kind of stillness. It is ready to tunnel, and when it does, something strange begins to unfold. Not only does it move, it vanishes, skips the middle, reappears on the other side. What happens inside the tunnel? Does the particle move quickly? Does it slow down? Does it age? Or does time simply step aside? This is one of quantum physics' quietest mysteries, not shouted across headlines, but whispered in laboratories, because when you watch a particle tunnel, you don't see how long it takes. You only see where it began, and where it ended. It's as if time went missing in between. You drift now, gently into that missing moment, and what you find is not a ticking clock, but a silence so complete, so pure, it feels like floating between heartbeats. Some physicists have tried to measure the tunneling time. They've invented ways to catch particles mid-leap, and yet no answer stays still. Some particles seem to cross in no time at all. Some seem to hesitate in a haze of maybe. Some seem to defy the very idea of duration. It's unsettling, isn't it? But also liberating, because time as you've known it is a river with a direction, a pace, but here in the tunnel, it is a mist. No past, no future, just now, stretched, suspended, undefined. Maybe you've felt that in waking life. A moment where time blurs, between waking and sleep, between decision and action, between question and answer. That's the tunnel, and your body knows it too. In those milliseconds when your neurons fire, when a signal leaps from one cell to another, time is not always smooth. It pauses, not to stop the world, but to let something impossible pass through. You rest deeper now, because you feel it in your breath. Each inhale does not take a second, it takes a space that bends, stretches, listens. Time is not only measured by clocks, it is measured by moments that refuse to be rushed, by tunnels that lead from one truth to another, without needing to explain how. So when you feel stuck in time, when hours drag or years vanish, remember time is not a rigid hallway, it is a curtain, and sometimes particles walk behind it. You picture the particle again. It was here, then it was there, and in between, a hush, the size of a miracle. As you begin to drift again, you wonder if time bends in a tunnel. Can the barrier itself be trusted at all? Is the wall even real? Or is it an illusion waiting to be questioned? You've spent your life trusting the edge of things. Doors that open, locks that close, lines between yes and no. Walls have always meant something. They divide, they protect. They say this far and no further. But in the quantum world, the wall begins to dissolve, not into rubble, but into meaninglessness. A particle approaches a barrier. It doesn't climb or force its way through. It doesn't break the wall. It simply ignores it, not rudely, not recklessly. Just gently steps into a realm where the wall was never truly there. You imagine such a thing. A barrier made of certainty, and a traveler made of maybe, and maybe is stronger. That's the truth tunneling reveals, that some walls don't need to be broken, because they were never real to begin with. They were assumptions. They were habits of thought. Probability curves show us that what we see as solid is often just dense possibility, and what we believe is impossible is often just unlikely. The wall is not a structure, it is a number, a chance, and chance can be soft. It can shift, it can open without you touching it. You lie still and wonder what other barriers in life might be like this. The thoughts that say you're not enough, the timing that never feels quite right, the door you thought had closed forever. What if none of them are real in the way you thought? What if they are probabilities? Strong, yes, but not final. You are not made of certainty. You are made of particles that walk through no as if it were just fog. You are the evidence that boundaries can blur. Even your own skin is more space than substance, more movement than mass, more whisper than wall. So you return to the particle. It did not destroy the barrier. It did not fight. It simply remembered the deeper law, that a wave can pass through what looks like stone if the math says it might. And math is gentle here. It doesn't say must, it says could, and could is enough. In this quiet floating space between sleep and thought, you imagine your fears, you line them up like walls. Then gently you erase the edges, you soften their outlines, you let them become curves instead of cliffs. Because tunneling isn't about brute strength, it's about surrendering to something wiser, to the truth that some things only seem impossible until you let them shift. And as your mind settles further, you realize the wall was never blocking you. You were holding it in place, but now you are letting go. And with that release, you begin to feel something rise in you again, something quiet, flickering, electrical. The thought itself, a spark, a signal, a neuron firing, a tunnel opening. Because what if your very mind relies on this same strange passage? Your breath has slowed now. You float in the quiet space between thought and dream. But even here, your mind is alive. Not loud, not busy, just softly glowing. Inside your brain, beneath layers of memory, beneath emotion, intention and language, tiny sparks leap from one cell to the next. Neurons, the threads of your inner world, speak to each other in flashes of light and chemistry, and in the space between them, there is a gap, a synapse, a distance so small it might as well be endless. The spark cannot walk across it, it cannot stretch or grow wings, and yet it reaches, it crosses, it connects, and in that connection a thought is born. But how does it cross? Some scientists believe that quantum tunneling may be part of the answer, that inside your brain particles leap without following the rules. They tunnel, not always, not obviously, but in just the right places, at just the right times. They pass through silence and light up the dark. This isn't science fiction, it's science still in motion. The idea that your very awareness, your memories, your flashes of insight, your laughter, your fear, your wonder, may depend on quantum leaps, not just as metaphor, but as movement, as real jumps through invisible barriers happening again and again, while you lie here in the dark, thinking, or not thinking, simply being. You imagine it now, a single electron caught in a protein bridge between two neurons. It shouldn't be able to make the jump, but it does, and that one leap, that one impossible passage, starts a chain of motion that becomes an image, a feeling, a realization, perhaps even this one. Tunneling is not just physics, it is awareness. You are a mind made of flickers, a body made of exceptions. You are not mechanical. You are improbable, and in that improbability, you are real. There is no need to understand every detail, no need to decode the full language of quantum biology. It's enough to feel it, to know that what happens in stars also happens in your thoughts, that your quietest moments carry the same mysteries as the farthest galaxies. The next time you forget a name and it suddenly returns, the next time an idea arrives from nowhere or a memory rises uncalled, think of the tunnel, think of the spark that crossed a gap without a map, and feel gratitude for the impossible things that your mind performs while you sleep, while you dream, while you simply exist. You are not a machine, you are a question made of warm breath, flickering neurons, and the faint glow of probability. And just like particles, your thoughts don't always follow the expected path. Sometimes they leap, sometimes they arrive where they shouldn't. But they arrive all the same, and somewhere in that strange arrival, you begin to feel that your memories may not be made of stone either. They shimmer, they move, they tunnel, and that's where we'll go next, into the memory itself, and how it too bends like light. Memories don't live in drawers, they are not locked away in tiny labeled boxes inside your brain. They are motion, they are pattern, they are whispers traveling the space between what was and what still echoes. You lie here in the hush of night, and memories begin to stir, not loud, not all at once, just the flicker of a face, the warmth of a place, a word you once whispered in a moment that mattered, and somehow, your brain keeps these moments. But not like a hard drive, not like a folder, like a dance. Like a pathway traced again and again by particles, until the path becomes easier to find, even in the dark. Scientists are still learning how memory really works, how synapses grow stronger, how signals become habits, how proteins reshape themselves to hold an echo. But deep beneath these mechanisms, there may be something smaller still, something quantum. Particles tunneling in and out of proteins that store memory. Waves of probability, shaping how long a memory lasts, or how quickly it fades. You float inside this idea now. Inside the brain, not as a machine, but as a garden, grown from chance, tended by uncertainty, and blooming in flashes of recall. Maybe the strongest memories aren't the clearest, but the ones that tunnel most often, the ones whose particles refuse to stay behind the wall of forgetfulness. You think of a moment, childhood, perhaps, the sound of rain on a window, the scent of bread warming in the oven, a voice laughing. Why does that moment return tonight, after so many years? Maybe because a particle decided, against all odds, to cross the gap. Maybe that moment lives because it still flickers in the folds of your neurons, not locked, but shimmering. And shimmering things, though fragile, can be beautiful. They can be strong in their own quiet way. Even forgetting has its rhythm. Memories fade not into nothing, but into possibility. They drift waiting for the right spark, the right alignment, the right dream to call them back. You've felt this before, when a smell suddenly opens a window into a whole forgotten day. When a song unpacks years in the space of a breath, that's tunneling too. Not only of electrons, but of meaning. And it doesn't always follow logic, it's not linear, it doesn't obey the clock. It obeys the shape of your heart. Tonight, your memories float around you like stars not yet named. They glow. They wait, not everyone will return. But some will find their way back through the strange permission this universe gives to those who try. And in that, you begin to sense something deeper. That your identity isn't carved in stone. It's painted in light, in soft trails that curve and reappear with every breath you take. You are not who you were yesterday. And yet you remember, you feel the thread. That thread is made of tunnels, of particles refusing to stay apart, of chances taken by the smallest parts of you. And perhaps that's enough, to know that memory is not lost, but waiting. And matter, the substance of your body, remembers, too. Atoms are passed down. They come from stars, from soil, from ancestors. They are shaped by experience, but they carry the imprint of everything they've touched. You are a memory made flesh. And as you drift even deeper now, eyes heavy, thoughts soft, you wonder, if memories tunnel to return, what else might reach you from the edge of science and dream? Now, let go. Let the logic soften. Let the numbers fade into mist. You've wandered through equations, into the sun, the cell, the memory, the mind. Now you arrive at the edge, where physics meets something quieter, something you've always known, but never needed to prove. You arrive at a dream, not a fantasy, not an escape, but the strange, shimmering place where the rules you've learned begin to relax, just enough to let you through. In quantum mechanics, the tunnel isn't a thing, it's a possibility that reveals itself only when believed in. Maybe dreams are like that. Maybe imagination is the brain's own tunneling effect. A leap not between places but between realities. You are lying still, but you are moving. You are moving toward a thought that has no map, but calls you forward, just like the particle. Not forced, not guided, just permitted. Because the deeper you drift, the more you sense that tunneling isn't just for particles. It is a law for longing, a law for the impossible that still finds a way. What if your dreams, those strange flashes of color and memory and feeling, are tunnels too? What if they connect things that couldn't be connected by waking steps? You've dreamed of people long gone. You've solved problems without effort. You've seen futures that haven't happened, and still they feel true. You've felt the tug of places you've never been. Is it all imagination? Or is your mind like the quantum world? More wave than wall, more yes and than yes, no. Particles tunnel, not because they want to. They tunnel because the universe allows it. It builds space for the unlikely. And if your mind is made of the same stuff, the same flickers, the same fields, then it too must carry that space. The space where wonder can rise, the space where a dream might not be nonsense, but navigation, a kind of slow symbolic travel through the boundaries your waking world insists are real. Tonight your body rests, but your being wanders. You pass through old houses, through roads made of light, through questions that dissolve before they answer, and none of it feels wrong, because in dreams walls become fog, and tunnels appear beneath your feet. When you dare to walk forward without seeing the ground, you begin to understand. Tunneling is not a trick, it's not even rare, it's everywhere, in your body, in your thoughts, in your stories, in your quiet hope that something more is always possible. So when you wake, and the world feels heavy again, and the barriers return, Remember this. There is always a gap, always a curve in the math, always a softness in the rules. There is always another way through. It may not be direct, it may not be likely, but you've seen it now. You've felt it. You are made of this law. You are not stuck. You are not too late. You are not separate from wonder. And just like the particle, you don't need to know how. You only need to know that it is allowed, that the dream itself is permission. And now, as you breathe in the last of this slow starlit story, you rest in the knowing that the world is not closed. It tunnels, and so do you. You are not alone in this stillness. There is something beside you, not a person, not a shape, but a wave, a soft shimmer, gentle and wide, resting across the floor of possibility. It does not rush, it does not strain, it hums. This is a particle, but not the kind you learned about in school, not a tiny ball, not a hard point. It is a wave of choices, not undecided, but open, open to direction, to location, to time, open to what might happen if the world allows. Particles, you see, are not made of certainty. They travel all paths until observed, and only then, only when touched, measured, seen, do they pick one. You lie back, and your breath joins that rhythm. Inhale all the roads you might take, exhale one step, softly chosen. We call this the wave function, the elegant map of all that could be in the life of a single particle. But it's not just math, it's a story. Every moment, the particle is writing its next line with invisible ink, ink made of probabilities, of silence, of waiting, and then a page turns, a choice appears. This is what happens before the tunnel, before the wall, before the leap. The wave settles and says here, not because it had to, not because it was forced, but because the story reached that part. You may think of your own life now, the moments before decisions, the quiet spaces where all paths seem blurred, and none feel wrong. That is the wave. You are in it, always, and every step you take is not just movement, but collapse. A moment where your own wave decides to become a point in time, not final, not fixed, but real. Tunneling then is not just about skipping a wall. It is about choosing to exist where you shouldn't, where the odds were low, where the path was unclear, where the barrier seemed certain, and yet you appeared on the other side, because the wave said yes. You are made of these yeses. Your life is a long unfolding of improbabilities, permitted. So when you hesitate, when you fear choosing wrong, remember the particle. It never worries, it never rushes, it only flows and then gently becomes. Tonight you float in that wave. You feel no urgency, because you know that you are not just heading somewhere. You are somewhere, right here. The wave has chosen, the world has opened, and now you begin to wonder, if the wave chooses only when seen, what happens when the wall itself watches you back? There is a strange kind of magic in being seen. It's soft, subtle, powerful. It can shape who you are. It can shape what is. In the quantum world, this is not just a feeling, it is a rule. You lie still now, but your thoughts lean forward toward a question that gently shimmers at the edge of all you've heard so far. What if watching changes the thing you watch? In our everyday world, observation seems innocent. You look at a star, and the star continues shining. You watch a river, and it flows on. But down in the tiny flickering space of quantum mechanics, things are different. Here a particle exists in a blur of possibilities, a wave soft and wide. But the moment you look, it chooses, it collapses, it becomes, not before, not independently, only in response to being seen. You might wonder, is the particle aware? No, not like you. But it responds, and the wall it faces, the invisible barrier we've traveled through so many times, also changes when it is watched. Physicists have found that trying to measure a tunneling particle can stop it from tunneling at all, as if the act of observation rebuilds the wall, thicker, sharper, final. This is called the quantum Zeno effect. Watch closely enough, and nothing moves. Stare long enough, and change becomes impossible. You pause here, letting that sink in. There is something beautifully fragile about that idea. That attention, so powerful, so illuminating, can also freeze the world it tries to understand. You feel it in your own life too. Some moments are best left unmeasured, some feelings wilt under analysis, some dreams prefer the dark, not because they are weak, but because they are made of motion, of becoming, of maybes that don't survive the spotlight. So what does this mean for you? It means that presence matters, but sometimes release matters more. Letting go of the need to know, to pin down, to define, to prove, may be the only way to let the miracle unfold. You are not separate from this truth. You've stood before your own barriers, felt the resistance, the pushback, the not yet, and maybe you've stared too long, tried too hard, measured every inch. But sometimes when you stop watching, when you stop trying to control, that's when you move through. That's when the wall softens. Because the universe is not a puzzle to solve, it's a partner to dance with. And in this dance, not every step is visible, not every motion needs to be understood. Some must simply be trusted. Tunneling reminds us, you do not pass through the wall by force, and you do not pass through it by scrutiny. You pass through by possibility, by surrender, by believing the leap is allowed without needing to see the path. Tonight, as your body becomes heavier with rest, your breath deeper, slower, you let go of needing to know. You let go of needing to watch. You become the space, not the observer. You become the wave again. And in that return to softness, you feel the world loosen around you. Barriers melt, time bends, and now you drift toward a new kind of reflection, not in light, but in illusion. Because what if not everything you see was ever really there? There's a mirror ahead of you now. Not silver, not glass. Just stillness, a surface that offers back an image, but perhaps no truth. You float before it, gently, quietly. You raise no hand. You ask no question, but you feel the strangeness stir. Because in this chapter of the quantum story, what is seen may never have been. Tunneling, this quiet rebellion of particles, has one more illusion to show you. Sometimes a particle reflects. It reaches a wall, does not pass, and bounces back. That much makes sense. But sometimes, and this is real, measurable science, the particle appears to bounce, even when it never touched the wall. No contact, no crossing, no arrival, and yet there is a reflection, a kind of ghost, a shadow of what could have happened. Physicists call it virtual reflection, and to most of us it sounds like a riddle. How can you reflect from something you never reached? But quantum mechanics isn't interested in surface logic. It's interested in possibility. In the realm of the very small, particles explore all paths, even those that would end in failure. They don't wait for success. They don't fear rejection. They simply try. And in trying, even when they are pulled back, they leave an echo, a shimmer, a non-event that still feels like presence. This is what you now see in the mirror, not your reflection, but the idea of one, the sense that something stood here, looked back, and moved on, without ever having been. You begin to feel the mirror differently now, not as a surface, but as a memory of a moment that never quite occurred. And you wonder how many of your own reflections are like this. How many thoughts looked like choices but were never made. How many fears shaped your path, even though they never came true. The mind reflects, even when it never touches the thing itself. A memory, a mistake, a hope, an imagined voice in a room long left behind. These become reflections too, not lies, not falsehoods. Just quantum ripples from paths you almost took, and somehow they leave marks, not scars, but impressions. A feeling that you were changed by something that never happened, and maybe you were, because in this universe, real is not a simple word. It bends, it leans, it allows for reflections that never began and endings that never had a start. You watch the mirror for a while longer, not for answers, but for the stillness it offers. You see not yourself, but the wave of all the selves you might be. You do not feel lost. You feel free. Free to let some thoughts pass by without holding them. Free to let some images fade without meaning. Not everything must be touched to matter. Not every event must occur to affect you. And with this, you drift further inward, toward the center of the atom, where energy levels wait for electrons to dance again. And some of them will tunnel, not through space, but through energy, because color, too, is born in these leaps. And that's where we go next. You drift now, gently downward, past skin, past breath, past memory, into the center of things, into the atom, not as a scientist, but as a traveler. And here, inside this quiet architecture, you see the world again, not large, not loud, but pulsing with purpose. At the heart of the atom lies the nucleus, small, heavy, dense with protons and neutrons. And circling this center, though not really in circles at all, are the electrons. But they don't spin like planets. They shimmer, they flicker, they exist in clouds of possibility. You've heard of this before, the electron shell, energy levels, places an electron may be. But what's rarely said, what most textbooks leave behind, is that these levels aren't strict staircases, they're stages. And electrons they skip, not by climbing, not by pushing, but by vanishing, and reappearing, they tunnel. Yes, even here, even in the most basic building block of matter, tunneling writes the story. You picture an electron in a low energy state, a quiet seat close to the nucleus. It doesn't have enough energy to move higher. The rules say it shouldn't. It doesn't have the fuel, and yet it leaps, just once in a while, not because it should, but because the universe allows it, and when it returns, when it falls back to where it began, it releases something light, not just brightness, but color. That light might be red, or green, or violet. It depends on the gap, how far the electron fell, what it gave back to the world in that return. And your eyes, those soft, sensitive, blinking things, are built to catch that glow. Your sight is born of tunnels. You see color, because electrons skip the impossible, and leap anyway. That green leaf in sunlight, that blue shadow in snow, that orange candle flicker, all of them, stories of energy released by particles that tunnel through restriction. And somehow your brain receives that story, and calls it beauty. You let that settle. The idea that beauty is not only in the thing you see, but in the physics behind it, that what stirs your soul may come from a particle's improbable jump, and you too are made of these atoms, these electrons, these stories. So perhaps your moments of beauty, those flashes of insight, those connections between people, those unexplainable emotions, are also born of inner tunnels, the ways your body disobeys limitation, the way your heart leaps without permission. You've been told life is logical, orderly, ruled by force and formula, but inside you are ruled by something softer, possibility, motion, tunneling. You walk through barriers, even when you do not know they're there, and from that walk, light escapes. You rest deeper now, beneath the weight of this knowing. Your body glows in the dark, not with fire, but with allowance. You are a field of leaping particles. You are a creature of color, a painting made from the physics of disobedience. And in the quiet center of your being, tunneling continues, unseen, unstopped, because the laws that allow this have no borders. They only have chances, and when enough chances are taken, the world becomes visible. But not every attempt ends in light, not every leap is made, and that too is part of the truth. Some particles wait, some fall short, some journeys pause before they begin, and next we rest with them. We sit in that space between permission and stillness, and feel what it means to try, but not yet pass. You drift now, gently downward, past skin, past breath, past memory, into the center of things, into the atom, not as a scientist, but as a traveler. And here, inside this quiet architecture, you see the world again, not large, not loud, but pulsing with purpose. At the heart of the atom lies the nucleus, small, heavy, dense with protons and neutrons. And circling this center, though not really in circles at all, are the electrons. But they don't spin like planets. They shimmer, they flicker, they exist in clouds of possibility. You've heard of this before. The electron shell, energy levels, places an electron may be. But what's rarely said, what most textbooks leave behind, is that these levels aren't strict staircases, they're stages. And electrons, they skip, not by climbing, not by pushing, but by vanishing and reappearing. They tunnel. Yes, even here, even in the most basic building block of matter, tunneling writes the story. You picture an electron in a low energy state, a quiet seat, close to the nucleus. It doesn't have enough energy to move higher. The rules say it shouldn't. It doesn't have the fuel. And yet it leaps, just once in a while. Not because it should, but because the universe allows it. And when it returns, when it falls back to where it began, it releases something light, not just brightness, but color. That light might be red, or green, or violet. It depends on the gap, how far the electron fell, what it gave back to the world in that return. And your eyes, those soft, sensitive, blinking things, are built to catch that glow. Your sight is born of tunnels. You see color, because electrons skip the impossible, and leap anyway. That green leaf in sunlight, that blue shadow in snow, that orange candle flicker, all of them, stories of energy released by particles that tunnel through restriction, and somehow your brain receives that story, and calls it beauty. You let that settle. The idea that beauty is not only in the thing you see, but in the physics behind it, that what stirs your soul may come from a particle's improbable jump, and you too are made of these atoms, these electrons, these stories. So perhaps your moments of beauty, those flashes of insight, those connections between people, those unexplainable emotions, are also born of inner tunnels. The ways your body disobeys limitation, the way your heart leaps without permission. You've been told life is logical, orderly, ruled by force and formula, but inside you are ruled by something softer. Possibility, motion, tunneling. You walk through barriers, even when you do not know they're there. And from that walk, light escapes. You rest deeper now, beneath the weight of this knowing. Your body glows in the dark, not with fire, but with allowance. You are a field of leaping particles. You are a creature of color, a painting made from the physics of disobedience. And in the quiet center of your being, tunneling continues, unseen, unstopped, because the laws that allow this have no borders. They only have chances. And when enough chances are taken, the world becomes visible. But not every attempt ends in light. Not every leap is made. And that too is part of the truth. Some particles wait, some fall short, some journeys pause before they begin, and next we rest with them. We sit in that space between permission and stillness, and feel what it means to try, but not yet pass. You've seen the leap. You've floated with particles that passed through walls, that moved without force, that lit the world with a single flicker. But now you arrive at the edge of stillness, a place where nothing leaps, where the wave tries and fails, where possibility remains unrealized. This is not a mistake, not an error in the math. It is part of the pattern, because even in the quantum world, the world of softness, permission, and chance, some tunnels do not open. You picture a particle approaching a barrier. Its wave spreads, searching, pressing forward into the blur, but then it fades, not into sadness, not into loss, just into stillness. There is no passage this time, no reappearance on the other side, only waiting, and in that waiting, a kind of peace, because tunneling is not a guarantee, it is not a promise, it is a chance, and chance must include silence, must include stillness, must include all the moments when nothing happens. You lie still now, too, and feel your own breath settle into this rhythm. How often have you tried, and felt no shift? How many doors did not open? How many calls were not returned? You are not a failure. You are simply part of this physics. The physics of probability, the math of maybe, and maybe does not always say yes. It sometimes whispers, "Not now." You float with the particle. It doesn't resent the barrier. It doesn't protest the outcome. It simply returns to what it was doing, vibrating, pulsing, flickering in place, content to wait, ready to try again, because the wave never dies. It only shifts. You let this settle in your chest. A breath that doesn't need to move forward. A moment that doesn't need to resolve. Stillness is not failure. It is part of the path. In this quiet space between leaps, you realize that not all transformation is visible. Not all progress is movement. Sometimes the act of approaching the wall is enough. Sometimes standing in front of the barrier, feeling its cool surface, trying is a kind of courage, a kind of tunnel, even if the end isn't reached. Even here, the wave leaves a mark, a shadow, a memory, a readiness. Particles do not forget the direction they once faced, and neither do you. So when life pauses, when the leap doesn't happen, trust the physics of rest. Tunneling is about probability, but rest is about patience, and patience is not inaction. It is motion that has learned to wait. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to remain, because when the time is right, the tunnel will return, the wave will press again, and maybe next time, it will pass. But even if it doesn't, you are still part of the story, still wrapped in the same gentle law that permits the quiet just as much as the leap. And as your thoughts soften into dream, a new world begins to open, one even colder, even stranger, even closer to the edge of invention, where particles tunnel not in stars, not in your cells, but in machines colder than space itself. Now drift with me, far from stars, far from the warmth of your breath, into a room so cold, even atoms forget how to shake. This is not the silence of nature. This is the stillness of invention. A place where scientists have turned space into a cradle, not for life, but for possibility. In these frozen labs, colder than the vacuum between galaxies, a new kind of tunneling begins, not in the heart of a star, not in your cells, but in machines, in metals, in circuits etched thinner than a hair, designed for particles to do what they do best, disobey. You are entering the world of the Josephson junction, a name that sounds like a bridge, and in many ways it is two superconductors, each humming with paired electrons, separated by an insulator, a barrier so thin it may as well be memory. And through it, without force, without heat, without classical motion, electrons tunnel, not one at a time, but in pairs, as if holding hands, as if saying, "We will pass together," or not at all. This flow is called a supercurrent. It moves with no resistance, no loss, no friction. And what it carries is not power alone, but promise, because here in this hum of quantum cooperation, humanity begins to dream differently. We are building machines that no longer run on switches, but on maybes. Circuits that don't flip from 0 to 1, but hover in between, quantum bits or qubits, suspended in tunnels of potential. These machines think in possibility, and to make them work, we must build places quiet enough for tunneling to speak. That is why we freeze the labs, why we quiet the noise, why we cool the circuits to fractions above absolute zero, because heat is chaos, and tunneling needs calm. You float now through one of these circuits, through a coil of niobium, supercooled, silent as moonlight. You feel no resistance, just flow, and you realize this too is life, a new kind, a new mind, born not of flesh, but of waveforms and walls that open without breaking. Tunneling, once a mystery, is becoming a tool. We use it now to build clocks more precise than time itself, to measure voltages with quantum fidelity, to explore thoughts that hum on the edge of imagination. You are still lying in your bed, but your body is part of this age, your phone, your GPS, the data that floats around you, and the devices that translate it. They all owe something to the coldest tunnels on Earth, and in a strange way, they're reflections of you. You too hold opposing states. You too dwell in contradictions, in logic and longing, in motion and stillness, in knowing and not. You are a kind of quantum being. So when the world around you seems chaotic, remember this frozen room, this quiet leap, this engineered permission for particles to trust what cannot be touched. Technology does not replace mystery. It kneels before it. It listens more carefully. And even as our machines learn to think with qubits, our minds remain the first and most curious devices, always wondering, always drifting toward what lies beyond the wall. And now, as the circuits glow in the cold and the current hums with purpose, you begin to rise again, because there's something else to visit. A question in the air: if we tunnel across short spaces, could we also tunnel across forever? Infinity is not a number. It is an idea, a direction with no end, a wall that stretches forever. You float before that wall now. It rises beyond thought, beyond vision, beyond time. A barrier not of stone, not of energy, but of impossible distance. And yet a particle approaches, small, flickering, unshaken. It does not ask whether the wall is infinite. It simply extends its wave. The math tells us as a barrier grows thicker, the chance of tunneling falls, exponentially, sharply, like a candle flickering in the wind. But that chance, it never becomes zero. Never, even in the face of infinity, there remains a sliver, a breath of hope. This is not just science. It is a kind of poem hidden in the equations, because what the numbers say is that a particle will always try, not foolishly, not blindly, but because trying is part of being. You lie in your bed and feel the edges of your own impossible, the dream too far, the healing too long, the answer too distant. You've seen your own infinite walls, and maybe you've stepped back from them. Maybe you've told yourself it's too much, too late, too far. But quantum mechanics would whisper, keep going, because the math allows it, because the rules do not forbid it, because even the thickest wall cannot make the probability vanish. It only makes it rare, and rare is not the same as impossible. You feel this now as a softness in your chest, a flicker in your breath, a widening of space within your own thoughts. What if persistence is not about belief, but about being? What if the act of pressing forward, even with no hope, is its own kind of truth? The wave of a particle does not ask whether it will succeed. It simply extends itself, gracefully, mathematically, endlessly. And there within the depth of this logic is something human, because we too move toward things we may never reach. We love, we grieve, we create, knowing full well that some things are too vast to conquer, and still we tunnel, because something inside us, perhaps the same thing that guides the particle, refuses to let go of maybe. You float with this thought through the cold, endless wall, and though it stretches beyond reason, you feel your wave extend, not to pass, not to win, but to be, and being here is enough. Your presence in the face of impossibility is its own kind of light, and as the wave fades so gently, so faintly, it leaves behind a whisper that even infinity cannot undo a chance. And from this quiet space, you begin to hear something else, not the wall, not the void, but a sound, a rhythm, a tone, as if somewhere within the wave, a kind of music is playing, and it too is shaped by the tunnel. Close your eyes a little deeper now, not into sleep, but into silence. And in that silence, listen, not with ears, with presence. There's a sound beneath the stillness, a kind of vibration, faint and ancient, not noise, not melody, but rhythm, a soft thrum that lives in the smallest places, because the quantum world is not still. It hums in motion, in transitions, in the trembling of particles as they exist between here and not here. You felt this before, in the body of a cello, in the ring of a wine glass, in the way your chest vibrates when a voice touches something deep. Now imagine that feeling, but smaller, down at the atomic level. Energy levels are not just numbers, they are tones. Each electron orbit, each state of a particle, has a frequency, a pitch. When particles shift, especially when they tunnel, they change that frequency, like a note being plucked on a string that was never touched. When an electron tunnels, it leaves behind a whisper, a soft trace in the symphony of existence. Physicists have begun to listen to these shifts. Literally, using ultra-sensitive devices, they detect vibrations from tunneling events, not metaphors, not guesses, actual measurable quanta of vibration, phonons, tiny packets of sound energy, carried through material by the act of a particle slipping through what once said, "You lie there now, still and warm, and imagine your body as an instrument," because it is. Molecules vibrating, cells pulsing, atoms dancing in synchrony, and beneath all of it, the faintest song, the music of tunneling. This is not poetry, it is physics. But physics has never been far from song. From the vibrations of strings, we built theories of everything. From the ringing of atoms, we understand temperature. And from the gentle hum of a tunneling particle, we glimpse the score written deep in the matter of the world. You are not separate from this. When you feel a wave of calm wash over you, when your breath finds a rhythm without trying, perhaps it is your body sinking to something deeper, something older, the same rhythm that lives in neutron stars, in semiconductors, in mitochondria, the same music that sings in the dark, even when no one listens. Tonight you listen, and in doing so you remember that sound is not always loud. Sometimes it is felt, the resonance of possibility, the vibration of maybe, the echo of a leap that happened somewhere far, but somehow touched you. Let this chapter be quiet, let it vibrate in your bones. You are the listener, you are the song, you are the string plucked by a universe that knows how to sing in silence. And when the song fades, it does not disappear, it becomes time, and time too begins to behave strangely when tunnels are involved, because what if the particle crossed without taking any time at all? Time, in your world, moves forward. A clock ticks, a candle burns, a leaf falls in autumn, and does not rise again. You are taught to see time as a path, linear, steady, irreversible. But in the quantum world, time stutters. It bends, it disappears. And nowhere is this more mysterious than inside the tunnel. You are lying still, but your thoughts press forward into that narrow space between where the particle began and where it reappears. You've followed it before. You've watched it tunnel, move through walls, defy the visible. But tonight, we ask, how long did that take? The strange answer, no one knows, and perhaps it doesn't take any time at all. This isn't metaphor, it's one of quantum mechanics' deepest puzzles. When a particle tunnels, its wave fades through the barrier, not vanishing, just thinning, like mist drawn across glass. But when physicists try to measure how long the particle spends inside the barrier, they find no clear answer. In some experiments, the time is effectively zero. In others, the time appears longer than expected, but the particle arrives instantly on the other side. Some interpretations suggest the particle never really entered the wall at all. It was everywhere, and then somewhere else. Time here is not a ticking clock. It is a question without punctuation. You breathe slowly now, you feel the minutes pass, but down beneath your breath, beneath your body, beneath the motion of blood and thought, time softens. Your atoms do not wear wristwatches. Your electrons do not count seconds. They exist. They flicker. They transition. And sometimes they leap from one state to another without walking through the middle. This is tunneling, and it may be timeless. You let that wash over you, The idea that time, this force you've trusted to structure your world, may be optional in places. Optional. You don't need to understand the math. You only need to feel how freeing that might be, because sometimes you carry the weight of time too heavily. Regret, deadlines, aging, late starts. But here, in the quiet pulse of the tunnel, time is not an enemy. It is not even a rule. It is a suggestion, a framework that occasionally dissolves when something dares to move in ways we cannot see. Perhaps this is why dreams feel so long, though they last only seconds, why memories return out of sequence, why healing sometimes comes suddenly, after years of silence, because not all progress happens along the timeline. Some changes tunnel through. No time, just transformation. And in that shift, something emerges more honest than any clock. You rest in this now, not rushed, not behind. You are where you are when you are, and that is enough. There is no need to race, no need to rewind. You are the wave, not the watch, and waves take their own time, or none at all. You begin to drift even deeper now, carried not by hours or minutes, but by something stranger, a flow of moments linked by meaning, not measure. And as you float further, you feel the edges of the barrier dissolve once again. This time, not into time, but into something even stranger. A tunnel so small, it lives inside the atom's core, where stability and chaos sleep side by side. And something must escape. Now you drift inward again, deep into the atom, deeper than electrons, deeper than time. You arrive at the nucleus. This is the heart of matter, tight, dense, ancient, protons and neutrons clinging together, held by a force so strong, it defies your everyday sense of strength. But even here, in this locked chamber, a secret escape exists. A tunnel. Particles live inside this core. Alpha particles, tiny bundles of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, trapped, tucked in, folded into the nuclear fabric. And yet, sometimes they leave, not by breaking free, not by pushing past the walls, but by tunneling. This is radioactive decay, not an explosion, not destruction, a quiet escape. One moment, the alpha particle is inside, the next outside. No warning, no visible path, only a whisper of energy left behind. You feel it now, this act of departure, not dramatic, but certain. It happens in bananas, in rocks, in your bones. And it is not rare, it's the reason carbon dating works, why scientists can tell how long a tree has been dead, how old a fossil is, how long ago a fire was lit in an ancient cave, because radioactive elements decay at a predictable rate, their particles tunneling out of the nucleus with astonishing regularity. This rate becomes a clock, a calendar, a story etched in the elements themselves. You think of your own life now, of the way time slips by, of how you mark moments, not by counting seconds, but by remembering change. Decay is not just the loss of something, it is also the record of time, and tunneling makes it possible. Even in death, there is motion. Even in stillness, there is departure. You are not decaying, but you are changing, and perhaps some parts of you, memories, ideas, cells, tunnel from one version of you to the next, quietly, softly, without force. This is not something to fear. Radioactivity, at its core, is not chaos. It is order expressed in probability, a reminder that even in what seems sudden, there is pattern, and in every escape, there is purpose. The alpha particle doesn't know what it leaves behind. It only moves when the math allows, and still its leap shapes worlds, changes one element into another, leads to new materials, new medicines, new meanings. You feel this truth now, not as science, but as rhythm. Everything leaves eventually. Everything tunnels from one state to another, and what is left behind is not ruin, but record. A mark, a moment, a trace of passage, like footprints in sand, or the faded warmth of someone's hand on your shoulder. You too are full of escapes, of little departures, of thoughts that leave one part of you and take up space in another. This is growth, and it's made of tunneling, the quiet transition between what you were and what you are now. You rest inside this now, not as something fading, but as something reshaping. You are not breaking, you are becoming, and as you lie here, touched by the same physics that governs the stars and stones, you sense a deeper softness ahead, not inside your cells, not inside the atom, but in your very existence. Because what if you are the tunnel, not your parts, not your particles? You reach out now, not with fingers, but with awareness. And what you feel is something you can never touch. Tunneling, not the idea, not the math, but the presence of it. A phenomenon so small it slips through your senses, yet so constant it shapes the world around you. It's in your phone, your heartbeat, the screen that glows beside you, the light that once traveled from the sun to warm your face, and you've never felt it, not directly, not in a way that registers like wind or warmth or pain, but it's there, always, everywhere. You might wonder, how can something so invisible be so essential? But that's the nature of reality. The most important things don't always announce themselves. They hum, they pulse, they remain. Tunneling is like that. No one has ever seen a particle tunnel. Only the before, only the after. A kind of quiet magic hidden in motion. You lie still now, sensing the stillness in your own body. But deep inside, beneath even the quietest cell, there's movement. Tunneling makes molecules react, cells signal, atoms behave in ways that allow life to exist. It holds proteins in the right shape. It lets your DNA repair itself. It fuels your breath, not metaphorically, but literally. Oxygen tunnels through proteins in your mitochondria. Energy moves not by pushing, but by slipping through. You are held together by things you can never grasp, and yet you are whole. This is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to comfort you. You are not the sum of what you feel. You are also what you don't feel, what you can't name, what moves in silence to keep you breathing. There is beauty in this, and the idea that the universe works quietly on your behalf, even when you aren't watching, even when you're asleep. You think again of the wall, the barrier every particle seems to face, and you realize something now. The wall was never against you, it was part of the path. The tunnel is not a loophole, it's not cheating, it's allowed, and more than that, it's essential, because without the ability to pass through impossibility, there would be no stars, no cells, no consciousness. Tunneling is not a trick of matter, it is the permission of the universe to continue. Even when the path looks blocked, even when the odds are low, even when no one sees you try. So tonight you honor the tunnel you'll never touch. You honor the electron that leaps, the proton that slips, the alpha particle that quietly escapes to start a new story. And you honor yourself, not because you are made of particles, but because you carry their rhythm. You too have passed through things you couldn't name, grief, change, long nights of not knowing what's next. You didn't break through, you became something new. That is tunneling, and you'll never touch it. But you are living proof of it, now. As your breath becomes slower, as your eyes soften beneath sleep, you wonder if everything you've known is held together by something so quiet. What lies beyond even this? What is the last tunnel, or the first? Is there an end to the questions, or are we always gently passing through? You've traveled far, not in miles, but in thought, in wonder, in quiet realizations that feel like stars blinking on one by one. And now as we near the end, You float towards something older than everything you've touched. The first tunnel. It may have happened before time had rhythm, before space had shape, long ago, before galaxies turned, before light knew where to go. Something tunneled. A field, a particle, an idea so strange we barely have words for it. It passed from what wasn't into what was, not through a wall, but through nothingness. Physicists call it vacuum decay, or quantum fluctuation, or spontaneous symmetry breaking. Names don't matter tonight. Only the feeling that something somewhere leapt. And from that leap, space stretched, time began. The fabric of existence unfolded like a soft breath into darkness. A universe emerged. And then, so did you. Not all at once. Not directly, but slowly, layer by layer, tunneling through atoms, through cells, through memories, until you found yourself here, in this body, in this room, in this hour. You are part of that first tunnel. You carry it in your lungs, in your dreams, in the way your thoughts skip from one truth to the next, without needing a bridge. The universe tunnels still, not just in labs, not just in atoms, but in ideas. A scientist sees a number differently, and a theory is born. A poet touches grief, and it becomes song. A person forgives themselves, and becomes someone new. Every transformation is a tunnel, every act of courage, a quiet defiance of the wall. And if there was a first tunnel, then maybe there is a last. Not an end, not a closing, but a passage. Maybe when this life reaches its edge, you do not stop. Maybe your consciousness, your awareness, your Eunice tunnels again, where no one knows, but the laws of reality do not shun uncertainty, they embrace it, they make space for it. So you rest now, not fearing the future, not clinging to the past. You are part of a wave that spans beginnings and endings, light and dark, presence and possibility. Your body sinks deeper into the sheets, not falling, but dissolving into calm. You breathe slowly, even your thoughts quiet, and yet tunneling continues, unseen, unfelt, but forever allowed. You've been through many tunnels, some in science, some in memory, some in heartbreak, some in healing, and none of them needed a door, only a chance, only a moment, only a whisper of maybe. You are not alone in the dark, you are part of it, the same way a particle doesn't escape the wall, but becomes part of what's beyond it. And now, in this last chapter, you reach the first, you return to the soft breath of a universe that began by passing through something unknown. And now, as your eyes close, and sleep rises around you like gentle water, you feel what the particle must feel. Not triumph, not clarity, just stillness, just motion, just being allowed. You are not trapped, you are not late, you are always passing through.